Sometimes it seems like the expectation from society or what we're seeing on social media is that we need to focus on one thing or pick one medium to focus on that we're the best at and that we enjoy the most, and kind of put all of our other interests to the side so that we can get really good at that one thing. But that's really not how creatives work in the real world. We aren't really meant to just have one focus that we are spending all of our time on. We're creative people by nature, and we're gonna have various interests. To me, the real challenge isn't in picking one thing to focus on, but it's how to juggle all of these different interests in a way that makes time for everything and also doesn't confuse your audience if you're trying to show what you're doing on social media and even monetize it on social media. But I do think that there's a way to have everything work together in a sustainable way that makes sense and fulfills us as artists. So in this video, I want to talk about making time for everything that you want to work on without feeling like you're neglecting a part of your creative self, as well as making it easier to switch between projects in your space that you're working in. We're also going to talk about how to avoid confusing your audience on social media if you're an artist that's present on social media, as well as how to monetize multiple creative interests on social media. So if this is a topic that you're interested in, I encourage you to stick around because I really hope that you'll get something out of this. So firstly, I want to talk about making time for all of your different creative interests without feeling like you're neglecting any parts of your artistic self. And the biggest thing that I want to mention is that sometimes we kind of work in seasons as artists. We are always going to have a lot of different things going on at once, but sometimes we'll feel like focusing on one thing over everything else. And I think rather than fighting against that, that's something to just lean into. If for this season of your life, you're really feeling like focusing on painting, for example, then just let yourself focus on painting. The beauty of being a creative person is that you're gonna have all these varied interests, and if you are really feeling passionate about one thing at that time, I think it's really important to lean into that because that's where your best work is going to come from. And more of just like a day-to-day thing that you can do in order to make time for as many things as you want to work on is time blocking. And it can be kind of a loose concept, like in the mornings you paint and in the evenings you do this other thing. For me, with my art, I tend to be more interested in making jewelry earlier in the day, and then I like to paint kind of later in the day or at night. And there's no real rhyme or reason to that. That's just kind of what happens for me naturally. That's what I'm driven to do. And if you want to be more stringent about it, you can say from this time to this time I'm doing this, and then from this time to this time I'm switching to this other thing. And that will kind of allow you to have enough time for everything and not neglect anything that you're wanting to work on. I think that this time blocking thing works for some people and it doesn't work for other people. And it's just something that you kind of have to try out as an artist to see if it's a method that works well for you. You can also do this in like a longer form if it works better for you. So for 1 week you're painting and the next week you're doing this other thing, and that kind of compartmentalizes things in a way where if you would prefer to do it that way, it might allow you to get more done in that span of time rather than feeling like you have to switch tasks at this set time that you set for yourself. You can give yourself a week to work on one thing. That way you can really immerse yourself in it. The way that works for me the best is just letting myself go with the flow. But I know that some people want a little bit more structure. So I wanted to kind of come up with a couple of options that might work for people that are a little bit more structured. What works for me is a little bit more of an intuitive approach where I'm just working on something for however long I feel like working on it and then allowing myself to switch to the next thing whenever I'm kind of tired of doing this other thing that I've been working on. I also know that something a lot of people struggle with is how to prioritize what things to work on. And unless you have some deadline that's been set, whether you're working on something for like a show or a gallery, or you're working on a commission that needs to be done by a certain time, or you like to set deadlines for yourself just to make sure that you get things done. Unless one of those things is in place, I think that figuring out how to prioritize things should just depend on what you feel like working on. It kind of just goes back to following our passions and our interests as artists. And if there's something that you would rather be working on than what you're doing, then I think we really need to allow ourselves to just go with that, because that's what we're doing here. That's why we're creating things in general, is to make things that we want to make. If you have a specific thing that you're wanting to get better at that time, then that might be a way to prioritize. If you're really wanting to get better at like pottery or something and you're spending all of your time painting, then you're not going to get any better at pottery. So if you're really interested and passionate about getting better at something else, then that might be a reason to prioritize that or to switch your priorities to that. And like I said, kind of the biggest part of this is allowing ourselves to go with the flow as artists. That's why we have these creative minds in the first place, is to allow them to wander and experiment and try new things. And if you're always making yourself focus on something specific and not letting yourself branch out from that, you might lose opportunities to experience new things that you might be interested in. It can also feel stressful to like juggle multiple unfinished projects at once, and it's easy to put pressure on ourselves to finish one project before we go to the next project. But I think that having multiple unfinished projects isn't a flaw. It's just another testament to how we are as creatives naturally. We're going to have things that we're working on that are unfinished, and we're going to jump between each thing and go back to that other thing later. And it's okay. I think that rather than trying to find a solution to having multiple unfinished projects, we just need to accept that about ourselves as artists, that we're going to have all these things that we're interested in doing at once, and we're not always going to finish something before we move on to the next thing. Aside from the mental barriers that we kind of already talked about, there can also be kind of physical barriers to having multiple interests. And that can be something like not having enough space for all of your things. A lot of these artistic things take up a lot of space. For example, right now I'm sitting in between my jewelry bench and my easel, and those are kind of my two biggest creative outlets, is painting and making jewelry. And for me, what works best is to always have those things set up so that I don't have a lot of friction in between tasks, and I can easily switch from one to the other without having to set everything up and tear everything back down again. If I have to get all of my supplies for something out every time I want to work on it, I'm a lot less likely to work on it. And that's just the way that I am. And I am lucky enough to have a room in my house dedicated to my art. I have my own art studio in my house. And I know not everybody is lucky enough to have that, but I still think that there are ways to, in an organized way, at least have everything have its own like bin or its own spot so that you can easily just grab those supplies out and start working on that other project or medium. If your space is set up in a way that you can easily switch between different things, you're a lot more likely to work on those other things and to be able to pursue multiple creative passions without having these barriers to entry that prevent you from even starting working on other stuff. Something else that I've been working a lot lately on is editing videos. I've been making YouTube videos, and that has required me to spend a lot of time at my desk, which I found specifically sitting in a position where I am sitting at my computer and staring at it in a chair for long periods of time really kills my back. And I've been looking for an option that allows me to either sit or stand when I'm working at my computer, and that's where FlexiSpot comes in. FlexiSpot was kind enough to send me this desk, and I've been using it for about the past month with really satisfying improvements to my workflow. Specifically, they sent me the dual motor desk E8 with the curved bamboo top. I really like how you can see the natural grain of the bamboo, and the finish looks really nice in my studio. This desk is also super durable. It can lift up to 355 pounds and withstand impacts of 355 pounds up to 20,000 times, which gives it more endurance than steel. It also moves really smoothly, as you can see with this water test that I did, where I filled the glass all the way up to the top and it didn't drip out at all when the desk was moving. My personal favorite feature of this desk is the programmable buttons that it has. All you have to do is bring the desk to a position that you prefer, whether it's sitting or standing, and program it using the control panel. And the next time you want to go to that same position, all you have to do is hit that button that you programmed rather than having to remember the height that you preferred it at. FlexiSpot provides a 15-year warranty on the frame and the motor, and a 2-year warranty on the control panel and electronics, which to me really shows how much they stand by their products. I really appreciate FlexiSpot for sending this desk to me and making my process so much more ergonomic. And if you're interested in any of their products, I'll have a link for you in the description box below. Now we can kind of get into being an artist on social media and how we are showing up on social media as our creative selves and trying not to confuse our audience with all of our different interests, and how some people think that that can be kind of confusing and hard for people to digest. And the first thing that I'll say about this is I don't think it's that hard for people to understand. I think that where it can get a little bit difficult for people to figure out their groove is when they're trying to share not only their art content, but also other things. Like if they're trying to also kind of be an influencer type person, that is kind of when it gets hard for maybe like the algorithm to show your content to the right people, or for the right people to find your content, because it might be a little bit more specific to find someone who is into someone who paints, makes jewelry, works with clay, but also likes to make makeup videos, talk about their pets, all these other things. So I think that's where it can get a little bit muddy. But if you are just making content about your art and it's multiple mediums under one account, I think that is a lot easier for people and for the algorithms to understand than we give them credit for. So the way that I am showing up on social media as a creative person is kind of this umbrella approach, where underneath this big umbrella is all of these things that I like to create. And the umbrella is me, the creative person. And that way I can bring little bits of my personality into my content and little pieces of my story into my content and talk about why I'm doing what I'm doing. But the visual and the main point is to share my art. And that kind of allows me to share a lot of different things under that same umbrella. Because at that point, with kind of what you've set up for yourself, if you take this approach, your audience is more invested in you as a person, as this artist that they follow, rather than you being a painter or this one specific medium that they think that you should focus on. You've already shown them that you're a multi-passionate creative person, and they're invested and they want to see what you come up with. And once you've kind of figured out how to take this approach of having all of your different creative interests under this one umbrella, which is you, it can also be really helpful to come up with a content plan. And it doesn't have to be super specific, but it can be specific enough that it's repeatable and you don't have to think deeply about it every week. You don't have to really sit down and plan your content every single week. You can come up with a plan of like, on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, I'm gonna post a short form video. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm gonna post a photo. And then if you're doing YouTube, maybe once a week or once every other week, you post a long form video. Having a structure like that helps take all of the hard thinking about what am I gonna post out of the equation. And then you can just kind of plug in the content that you've already recorded that week, or the photos that you've already taken of your work that week, and you don't have to start from scratch every single week with your content. It can also help a lot with consistency, which I know we've all heard as artists, this fear-mongering of if we stop posting for a day or a week, we're gonna lose all of our momentum on social media. And while I think some of that is not necessarily true, I do think it's important, if you're wanting to get your art out there and gain momentum, to be consistent in posting on social media, if social media is your approach to getting your art seen by people. So having a little bit of a structure and a system to your content is gonna help you just be more consistent in general, because you already have a little bit of a plan. In addition to having a little bit of a plan, I think it's also important to make content that feels natural for us. It's easy to feel like we have to make the same content that we're seeing other people make, but if there's a certain type of video that feels natural for you, or if there's a certain part of your process that you want to share with people, I think that choosing the path of least resistance as far as that goes, and just consistently doing the thing that comes naturally to you, is the best approach, and eventually it will catch on. If you are consistent and you get really good at it and you figure out what works and pay attention to your audience's response to what you're putting out there, eventually you'll get there. And doing something that comes naturally to you and feels good to you is going to be a lot more sustainable than trying to copy what everybody else is doing. Another big part of being a multi-passionate creative person is monetizing all of these different things that you're making, because we want to be compensated for our art. And while some people never try to monetize what they make, a lot of us do, and a lot of us have the goal to make money from our art. If you are strictly trying to monetize kind of in real world scenarios, you can monetize all of your different things in a lot of different ways. You can put your paintings in art galleries, you can sell your other things that you make at like local shops and local art stores, or you can do like pop-ups, like go to weekend markets and sell your art that way. You can also try your hand in teaching, which can be either done in the real world or on the internet. Either way, you can leverage your knowledge in that way, which you can definitely monetize. Social media can be a really good tool for monetizing everything that you want to create, and it can be done using the technique that we've already kind of talked about, with just showing up online as a creative person and sharing your process and the meaning behind the things that you're making, and just having your audience form a connection with that to the point where they want to pay their money for it. And it doesn't have to be complicated. I just have a simple Shopify store. It doesn't have any categories or sections on it, but it has my jewelry and a hoodie on it right now. I do plan to add my paintings and some prints on there, but I do sell jewelry and the hoodie, and I have people message me for paintings or prints of my paintings, and I don't try to push any of those things at all, but I'm still able to monetize them because of the content that I'm sharing and the way that I connect with the people that are seeing it. It does take a certain amount of effort to gain this connection with people and have them connect with your art, but if you're not forcing it and you're doing it in a way that feels natural to you, it's really not that difficult, and it's not hard to get into a groove and kind of get into a good process of doing this. I do want to mention though that it's important to remember you don't have to monetize everything that you create. You can have creative outlets that are just for you and things that you just enjoy doing that you're not necessarily doing because you want to make money from them. It can be easy to feel like we have to monetize all of these different creative outlets to make them worth our time, but the reason that we're doing this in the first place is because it's something that we enjoy doing and that we get creative satisfaction out of doing. So try not to pressure yourself to always be monetizing all these different things, when sometimes you can just keep something for yourself if it's something you just enjoy doing and don't necessarily need to share with the world all the time. And if it's something that you do want to share, but you don't necessarily want to sell it, that's okay too. Just because you share a painting with your audience doesn't mean that you have to put it up for sale. And even if you get offers for it, you don't have to sell it. Or maybe the price that you would be willing to take for it, if you were to let go of it, is really high. I think if you have a piece that you really love, but you could still set a price on it, make sure that you don't take any less for it than what you are comfortable and what you would be okay with letting it go for. However you approach being a multi-passionate creative person, I think that it's really important to remember that it's okay to not have it all figured out. And it's okay to be an ever-evolving artist. Our interests are naturally going to change and evolve, and the things that we like doing are going to shift over time. And that's just part of being a creative person. It's really not necessary to put all this pressure on yourself to have everything figured out all the time, when as soon as you figure it out, it's going to change and your interests are going to shift. So you may as well be fluid and evolve with what you're interested in the moment, and just allow it to happen. Because if you resist change and you don't allow yourself to explore new interests, you're going to miss opportunities to evolve as an artist. It's really important to stay adaptable and allow yourself to change without feeling guilty about it. And above all else, it's important to focus on what feels right to you, because the only way that our creative lives are going to be sustainable is if we are enjoying them. And I'd really love to hear in the comments section below, what's been your biggest struggle with balancing multiple creative passions? I know that we all have our own unique challenges and struggles as artists, and I always love to have a chat in the comments section after posting a video, just so I can get to know you guys better and understand what you're dealing with. And on the subject of having multiple creative interests, I decided to start a second channel because I have a lot of interests that have nothing to do with art, and that is my animals, my career as a veterinary technician, and I just wanted to be able to make videos about kind of my day-to-day life that don't really have a lot to do with art without changing what this channel is at its core. So if you're interested, I will link my new second channel in the description box below. I really hope that you got something out of this video, and I really appreciate you for taking the time to watch it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.